With the help of Motion Builder's physics engine, we can have the prop naturally fall from the character's hand. Let's go ahead and learn how. Now we're not going to want to hand key this prop falling from the robot's hand, simply because that would not only require a lot of time, it would honestly be a waste of time when we can use dynamics to get this done much faster and get a far better result. So the first thing we'll do is figure out when we would like the prop to fall from the character's hand. We know that to be right around frame 187 when the hand is opened up. So from 186 to 187, we'll go ahead and create a space change using our multi-referential constraint. Now, very important, when we create these keys, we do not want to create them on our animation layers. Instead, we want to add them to the same layer we've been using to animate this object. That's the base layer. And see, here are our keys. If we add them to an animation layer, we'll notice that the system will cause the axe to blend back to its starting point on the table. We don't want that. So let's make sure we have the base layer selected. And now on 186, we'll take a look at our reference here. It looks at the wrist. That's what we want, so let's create a key. Now one frame after, on 187, we can now switch our reference to look at the axe. There's our keyframe, and take a look. The axe will now stop in space right here at that moment with no popping at all. Very exciting. So guess what? It's now time to finish up by working with rigid bodies. Let's go ahead and turn off auto key. And we'll now move to physical properties in our asset browser. Let's go ahead and grab our rigid body and add that to the axe. Let's now go to the navigator window. Let's go ahead and expand physical properties here. We can rename the rigid body. Let's go ahead and right click, choose rename. That's going to be rigid body underscore axe. Beautiful. Now we need to be very careful about the state of this rigid body. We need to animate this change in a way where there won't be any popping when the character lets go of this object. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that the activation is set to passive, meaning that the system will not take into effect not until this is an active object. Alright, great. So once we have that, we can then go ahead and create our physics solver. So go ahead and add that to our scene, just an empty space. Alright, great. Now, let's move back to our rigid body. Let's go ahead and just double click. And let's go ahead and keyframe our activation. So remember, we decided on 186 and 187. Let's see what happens when we keyframe on these same frames and then enable the physics engine. So on frame 186, I'll go ahead and create a keyframe here with the object set to passive, and then 187, let's go ahead and now switch this to active and create a key. Keep in mind that when we do this, we're only allowed to make this change when the solver is off. So if we were to go ahead and expand solvers and go to the physics solver here, you can see that it's offline right now. All right, so again, when we're making changes on our rigid bodies, we need to make sure that the system is off, otherwise that change will not be saved. Alright, so we can now go ahead and start to experiment with the physics engine. Let's go ahead and start the animation from the beginning. We'll go ahead and turn the system online, and let's now turn on live mode. Alright, so you can see that the prop does not fall from the table. Let's go ahead and play this back. Alright, beautiful. So he picks up the prop. Let's go and see what happens. Alright, take a look. So now we have physics kicking in and the prop falls. How cool is that? Now, you can see that there was a little bit of a pop when that prop fell, and that's simply due to the timing of our rigid body. Let's go ahead and turn the system off. So go ahead and make sure that the physics solver is offline, and we'll go back to our rigid body. Alright, so we just want to make sure that it becomes active at the right time. So instead of having that change occur on the very same frames that we have created that change on the constraint, we could just shift the keyframes one frame before so that there won't be a pause and then a fall. it's essentially going to happen as the axe is starting to move down. Alright, so that's how we'll fix this. We'll essentially want to just go in and make sure that in our F-curves window, we go ahead and select the activation channel. We'll go ahead and press the A key to zoom into our keys here. We can now go ahead and select both of them. Let's go ahead and back up our view a bit. And we'll just go ahead and slide them down just one more frame. So one frame to our left to speed up their timing. Alright, great. So now, let's go ahead and move back to the navigator window. One other thing I'd like to do is add more weight to this object just to make sure that it's timed well as it falls. So going to the physics solver, let's double click. We'll go to properties and we'll go ahead and set the gravity from negative 9.8, which is standard, which is the actual rate that an object should fall. But in this case, we want to create the illusion of a faster fall, so we can always increase this to an even greater value. Let's say to about a value of negative 40. Alright, so from here we're ready to take a look at the animation again. Let's go ahead and start back from the beginning. We'll go back to our solver tab, and let's say we go ahead and turn the system online, choose live, and hit play. So again, the robot's going to go in and pick up the axe. That looks nice. And when he drops it, it looks very realistic. How fun is that? Alright, very cool. So in this lesson, we have learned how to blend between a constraint to a point where Motion Builder's physics system will take effect and cause our prop here to fall in a very realistic way, which is super cool. Now what we need to do is learn how to bake the animation out. And we can also transport this entire scene back to 3ds Max. So I'll show you how to do that. So once we have finished animating the character and prop, it's then time to bake both. That way we can export the assets out. In this lesson, we'll work on baking the axe. So in order to bake the prop, we'll need to turn the physics solver online. And now instead of using live, which is a way to test dynamics, instead we're ready to use record. So let's go ahead and click on the record button on our transport controls. We'll choose override when asked if we would like to override our current take. And now it's just a matter of playing back the animation. So what's happening in the background is Motion Builder is actually baking the animation out as it plays through. Great, so we'll go ahead and stop it once the sequence finishes. Excellent, so the axe is now baked down. We no longer need our physics solver. We can right click and choose delete. We could also remove the rigid body. So we can go ahead and find that and again delete that. Now we'll take a close look at the animation just before we're ready to export it out. It'd be a good idea to just make sure that this plays through correctly. And you can see here as the character drops the axe, that actually looks really nice. So we're good to go here. Now if you notice that when the axe falls, that let's say the position of the axe isn't in the best spot. Remember, you could always use your F-curves. You can come over to your F-curves window, go to, in this case, the translate Z-axis, and you have full control over deciding where that axe is going to end up by simply modifying your keyframes. And this wouldn't take much time at all. It's just a matter of coming in, maybe removing some keys and adjusting the timing of certain keys to make sure that this all plays together very well. Alright, great. So once the axe is taken care of, we'd then be ready to export it out. So I'll go ahead and show you how to do that in the following lesson.